All right, hi everyone. We're going to finish our series on the triangle here. And we're going to look at logic, or logos, as you know it from the Greek, in the triangle, in a speech by Susan B. Anthony. This was given, and you can see up here on the top, let me just get my highlighter ready to go. You'll see up here on the top, up here in this section, it gives you the breakdown of what's happening here. So this speech was given by Susan B. Anthony after her arrest for casting a legal vote, presidential election of 1812. She was tried and fined $100, but she refused to pay it. So this is going to be, that's the circumstances around this. It's going to be a speech advocating women's suffrage way back in 1872. So she's significantly ahead of her time there. Now, before we start on going through the highlights of this as it appeals to logic, let's dispel a few myths about that, just as we've done for pathos and ethos. We like to think of appeals to logic as involving facts, figures, numbers, maybe charts and graphs. And while that's in fact true, that's not the whole picture. You can appeal to logic and never use a number, or never use a graph, or never use a chart. Remember that logic is a process. It is a rational process. If A is true, then B must also be true. Lots of logic is based on something called the syllogism, which, if you remember, is sort of a three-step logical sequence. Here's an example of a very simple syllogism. If I were to say, Nellie, or let me back up. If I were to say, all elephants are pink, then Nellie is an elephant. Therefore, Nellie is pink. That's logical. Now, of course, the premise, all elephants are pink, now that's false. That premise is false. Sometimes we talk about warrants and things. But that's false. But the process of thinking, all elephants are pink, Nellie is an elephant, therefore Nellie is pink, that is in fact logical. If this one thing is true, and this other thing is true, then this other third thing must also be true. So again, logic is a thought process. It is not necessarily confined to numbers, figures, charts, and graphs. I say that because that's what's going to happen here. Susan B. Anthony isn't going to use any charts. As you can see, if I scroll here, there's no charts here. There's no graphs. The only number you're going to see is way down here, and that's just the date. So no charts, no graphs, no numbers. But nevertheless, she argues logically. Okay, so let's get to it here. Again, we're going to confine ourselves to logic, even though she uses other techniques as well. I'm just not going to highlight those on this particular speech. Okay? Okay, in the introduction, she's going to set down the parameters of the discussion. Okay, I was an indictment for the alleged crime of having voted in the last presidential election without having a lawful right to vote, and so on. Okay. So she's just setting up, here's the context of this debate. We're not going to really get into that there. She then talks about what the preamble of the Constitution is. Let me move down just a little bit here. There we go. So the preamble of the Constitution is thus. Okay. So that's the, if you want to use your syllogism example, here's what the preamble of the Constitution says. Okay? So there's really no debate there. That is, in fact, true. It does say that. So she begins her logical argument with a fact. This is what the preamble says. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, to promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Some of us older folks, it's hard to read that without hearing the Scholastic Rock song in the background, or Schoolhouse Rock song in the background. Anyway, so she quotes that. That's a fact. Okay? Then she gets into here. I'm going to make this smaller. There we go. It was we the people, not we the white male citizens, not yet we the male citizens, but we the people. So she goes back to the quote, we the people. Okay? None of this is debatable. That is what the preamble says. So she's not using opinion here, at least not yet. She's not using her thoughts on the matter. That's what the preamble says. She's going to use all that data here to try and make that point. Okay? Women as well as men. Okay? And then here's her point that she wants to make. Well, I mean, in terms of the suffrage. Okay. And there we go. It is a downright mockery to talk to women of their enjoyment of the blessings of liberty while they are denied the use of the only means of securing them, meaning those blessings, provided by this democratic Republican government, the ballot. You see that there's a logic to that. Okay? How can you talk to women about being having the blessings of liberty when they cannot actually enjoy those blessings of liberty? There's something, as she puts it, a mockery about that. It's illogical to assume that. Okay, so here's some more logic for you. There we go. For any state to make sex a qualification that must ever result in the disenfranchisement of one entire half of the people, okay, is to pass a bill of attainder or ex post facto laws, therefore a violation of the supreme law of the land. I'm not going to get into tone here, not going to get into word choice, but she's talking about any state that qualifies that part of the preamble, we the people, is making a law after the fact. Okay, after this law was established, to say, well, the word we doesn't mean women. That's making a law after the fact, after some other law was already made, which is the supreme law of the land. Supreme law being the federal constitution. Can you see the logic to this? There's no emotion being overtly appealed to. Now, it's of course happening, but we're not going to get into that. She's using logic. If the preamble of the federal constitution calls on we the people, any attempts to limit that are therefore attempts to limit the supreme law, the federal constitution. Okay? Let's move on here a little bit. Okay? There we go. Now again, I'm not going to get into the emotion of the piece. You could if you were writing an essay, but we're not going to do that today. So I'm ignoring that on purpose. Okay? So anyway, I want to look at right here. Okay. There we go. Webster, Worcester, and Bouvier all define a citizen to be a person in the United States entitled to vote and hold office. Okay? Well, if that's what our definition of citizen is, person in the United States entitled to vote and hold office, okay, then she asks this question. Are women persons? She's trying to connect, right there, person to person. I hardly believe any of our opponents will have the hardihood to say they are not. So, and watch how her logic applies. She poses the first question, are women persons? Well, clearly yes. Let me erase some stuff here. So, then we go to being persons then, women are citizens. See that? You get it? Excuse me. So, if these people, all respected sources, define a citizen to be a person in the United States, and we can all agree women are persons, then they must be citizens. Therefore, no state has a right to make any law or enforce any old law that shall abridge their privileges or immunities. So if women are persons, which they clearly are, and all persons are citizens, excuse me, sorry, it therefore follows women should have the right to vote. Do you see how that all works there? Okay. Again, there's a lot more going on, like she makes this great statement here, which we're not going to get into right now, but because that's a whole different argument. But I'm sorry. The logic that she employs here is, if A is true, women are persons, and B is true, persons in the United States are citizens, then it must therefore follow that women should have the right to vote, because that's a right that citizens have. That's what I mean by she is using logic without using graphs, charts, numbers, scientific data. She uses a chain of reasoning. If you start here in the federal constitution, in the definition of citizenship, if you start at those places at which we can all agree, it therefore follows that, and now in her case, women should have the right to vote. All done logically. Okay?